Hello, everyone. I'm Brooks Rayford, CEO of the North Carolina Technology Association, or NC Tech, and I want to welcome you to this live briefing or recording, if you're watching it later, for the release of our quarterly leadership poll. In the early months of COVID, during the spring and summer of 2020, we did some polling to take the pulse of leaders in the tech sector primarily about how COVID was impacting their organizations, to get a sense of their expectations for the near term and so forth. The results proved to be of great interest to our members and to the media. So starting in 2022, we launched a quarterly poll that asked some consistent questions about general business sentiment, like on hiring or growth and things of that nature, as well as some questions that might rotate in or out based on current events or issues. We conduct the poll in the first month of each quarter. So this fourth quarterly poll was conducted last week, and we are releasing the results today. You'll find this on our website at nctech.org/pulse. We polled about 300 people and had a near 50% response rate, so a really good response rate this time. The respondents are members of our board of directors, our board of advisors, tech CEOs, and leaders of large tech hubs or sites in North Carolina. Our sponsoring partner for since the inception of these polls has been the Stearns Financial Group. Their founder, Dennis Stearns, serves on the NC Tech Board of Advisors and is very engaged with us. And Dennis joins me today. Welcome, Dennis.
Yeah, thank you, Brooks.
Glad to have you. We'll chat through some of these results as we move through. And we'll highlight some of the areas where we've seen some shifts in sentiment or activities from the last quarterly poll. So let me get my buttons in order here, and we'll get started. So we first have a couple of questions just to give you a flavor of the type of respondents or their organizations. And this is pretty typical distribution of size of organization that the respondents represent. So you can see the mix there. This actually shows that the respondents' organizations skew a little bit larger than the average NC Tech member base. We have about 600 member companies and organizations, and about 2/3 to 3/4 of those have 50 or fewer employees. And you can see the respondent distribution here skews a little larger than that. On the other hand, this slide tracks almost exactly. About 2/3 of our members are headquartered in North Carolina, and you can see that that's reflected in the respondent rate. And this remains pretty consistent across the polling. This gives you a flavor of the role of the respondents. I did notice a switch here. IT as a core responsibility shot up from the last poll and took the place of sales and marketing as the second highest, but clearly C-suite is the dominant respondent category. So we asked, how did you perceive the past quarter for the North Carolina tech sector, not your organization, but for the sector? And what we see here is that the good and great remains strong. So given what's going on in the economy and uncertainty about it, it's somewhat encouraging that looking in the immediate past had a pretty positive response rate. And again, similar to what we've seen in past polling. Then we asked specifically about your organization. And this is interesting because then people are looking only at their own company, and I'm always curious to see if there's a correlation between how they view the sector and how they view their own. And what we noticed here is that the great went up a few points, and the good saw a shift of about 8 points that moved over to okay. So still pretty positive, but there was some shift between those who said good moving more into the okay, so down a tick in the middle of that pie chart there. Looking ahead, I expect that over the next quarter, our business will grow, stay the same, et cetera, very similar to the last poll. And again, this is forward-looking, and so the optimism is encouraging, given if you add stay the same or grow is nearly everybody.
Yeah, it does seem like, Brooks, our member companies are electing to not participate in the recession.
Right. I wrote a post the other day entitled, "What if they threw a recession and nobody came?" So this one is a bit of an eye chart, but it does show a distribution across various factors. So the pandemic has impacted business in many ways. Please rate the following as it applies to your organization. And what we saw here was, I'll zero in on the employee health and safety focus. That's the fourth bar. There was a 10-point shift from agree to neither agree or disagree. So all the other charts all the other columns were pretty on par with past responses. But I think what this reflects is there was a heightened focus on employee health and safety when the pandemic was a more present and immediate threat, in person and so forth. As that has begun to taper, the responses here have tended more toward the neither agree nor disagree category. What impact has the economic environment had on your hiring? This was an encouraging response. It actually went up 5 points in the still hiring category. And the furloughs or pay reductions or layoffs has always hovered in that 1% to 2% range as long as we've been doing this quarterly poll. So again, this is a prospective look ahead. People are hiring. It means they have openings and they're seeking to fill them. I would comment here, the last monthly unemployment rate that was reported was 3.5%, which ties for the lowest it has been in 50 years. This is national. Tech is only 1.7. So tech unemployment is half the size of an already low national unemployment rate. We're also seeing, Dennis, I'm curious of your thoughts about this. We were discussing in a previous conversation how some of the metrics that typically follow a pattern when there's a recession aren't really cooperating. And one of those is unemployment. Those who are losing jobs are not having a hard time finding another. The applications for new filings for unemployment benefits have remained low. Unemployment, as we've seen, has remained low. What are you hearing?
Well, we hear the same thing. The number of job openings has come down a little bit from 2 job openings for every potential person who could fill the job to 1.7, which is still pretty tight labor market. And so I think a lot of these statistics really reinforce the fact, maybe it's the strong North Carolina economy, maybe it's our technology sector, but we are apparently in good position to ride out whatever is coming in 2023.
Indeed, I think the biggest unknown is the impact of some of the global challenges that are outside of our control that may impact us. But these numbers are encouraging for sure. The other version of the eye chart here is asking our respondents to rate North Carolina's relative strength in the following competitive areas. It covers business climate, cost of doing business, et cetera. And what was interesting to me is there were 2 of these that saw movement in a more positive direction than the past, although they were both positive in the past as well. And those were quality of life and higher education assets. So I think our respondents feel very positively about those 2 things. They always have, but those are the 2 that moved even stronger in this most recent poll. The others stayed fairly similar to the last time. An open-ended question, so we captured some that reflected the distribution of answers here. What makes you optimistic about the next 12 months? We see some repeat answers, reduced pandemic impact on the supply chain. We heard supply chain in the last poll as being one of the things that people are optimistic about. Still demand for talent being strong. Clients still spending, we talked about that. Interestingly, several people did say not much. In other words, they're not much makes them optimistic. So there's certainly a contingent of people who are not as positive about what the future holds. Elections came up for the first time in our polling because of, I guess, the time of year. And so you can see some of the responses here. And this was interesting. Which of the following issues are you most concerned will impact your business? These all remained in the same order, but inflation went up 6 points. It was about 79% last time, so it increased in the concern factor. And then unemployment, the worry about unemployment, actually went down 6. So it had been in the mid 50s last time, down to 48.5 now.
Yeah, and I think this is persistent across a lot of companies, not just technology, that there is worry that inflation seems to be stickier than perhaps everyone thought.
Yeah. Right. We've all year been asking as this transition occurs, such as it is, to hybrid work or some form of mixed policies. What percentage of your workforce is still fully remote on any given day? And we break this into quartiles. So from 0 to 25%, you'll see the numbers there, and all up to 25 to 50, 50 to 75, and 75 to 100. And what we notice there is that the dark blue, the one that says nearly all of our employees are remote, that went down 5 points. And those 5 seem to have shifted right over across diagonally to the 25 to 50% number, which went up 5 points. The other 2 remained about the same.
There remains
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Brooks, there remains a significant debate in the C-suite and all up and down organizations about productivity, remote versus in-person versus hybrid.
Indeed, and we see it play out. There are a lot of news stories that interview some company executives firmly believe that everyone needs to be in place in person and have instituted that policy. Others have gone the hybrid route and tried to figure out how to navigate that, and others have given employees full choice. It really does cover the gamut. So a related question is, what percentage of employees at your organization can choose the degree to which they work remotely? And the dark blue area, which is still dominant, is down 7 points from last time. And that was fairly evenly distributed. Those 7 points went away to the other 3 categories in fairly similar distribution. So again, those 2 slides taken together show a modest but noticeable tilt back toward in-office to at least some degree. And then we've been asking about future space. So as it has been the case, there's this seemingly mixed message in that there's still strong feeling about offering hybrid or remote work. And yet you see here that companies are saying that to hold steady on their office space or to grow it, to add it. We're at 66, 67, 2/3 altogether plan to stay or grow. And as we ask a little more about that, anecdotally talking to executives, and we gather company owners and leaders fairly regularly, the reasons that they give are, we may be coming back into the office more, but it won't look like it did before. We won't be as dense. There'll be more square feet per employee in terms of the math for that. Teams will come in and then go away and that sort of thing. So we need flexible workspace. So, and we're growing. As you saw the slide earlier about hiring, they're still growing the overall headcount. So there's not much sentiment, at least broadly speaking. There are always exceptions, but not much sentiment to eliminating or shrinking office space in the business community across the board. And that is the last slide. So it's interesting to see some of the shifts. We'll see if those continue. Interesting to see too the optimism about the economy and the lack of concern about people's individual businesses and the sector, paired with great concern about inflation and what that might mean. So a lot is in the air, a lot in the mix, but it's interesting to see these results over time. And you can do that by visiting nctech.org/pulse. You will see the past, the slide deck of the past polls there, and these video briefings where we discuss them. Speaking of which, I want to thank you, Dennis, for the support of Stearns Financial Group in this effort, and a reminder that this recording and slide deck will be posted on that same page as soon as we have everything edited up and pasted there. So for now, thanks for viewing, and we will see you next time.